say you wanted to count how many properties were single-family homes, how many were townhouses, and how many were condo co-op. One thing you don't want to do is count them one by one. It would take too long. Instead, you can use a built-in Excel function called COUNTIF. On a blank cell, enter equal sign, enter COUNTIF, open parenthesis. First enter the range of cells where you want to count from. In this case, as you can see, the data starts from C2 and it ends at C188. So C2 colon C188, comma, and then the criteria, but you have to enter it in quotation marks and you have to enter the exact phrase that you're counting. So in this case, the phrase is single family residential, close quotation mark, close parenthesis, press enter, and it counts there were 152 single family homes. You can press pause at this point and try this for townhouses and condos. Okay, next I want to show you, what if you wanted to count, instead of specific numbers, like in the case of year built, you wanted to count a range of numbers. Say for example, I want to count how many homes were built between 1900 and 1910. How many homes were built between those two? Well, there's a way to do this in Excel, except you have to divide this into two criteria. So when you're saying between 1900 and 1910, you're really saying two things. You're saying that the year build has to be greater than 1899, and I enter 1899 because this is a strict inequality sign. It's not greater than or equal to, it's greater than 1899. Okay, because I want houses built between 1900 and something. Okay, and the second criteria is also it has to be, the house had to be built in a year that was less than 1911. So these two criteria both have to be satisfied. So the way to do this now is, in a blank cell, enter equal, enter COUNTIFs with an S at the end, open parenthesis. First enter the range of cells where you want to count from. That will be N2 to N188 in this case. Enter comma, and then enter the first criteria in quotation marks. So in quotation mark, I'm going to enter greater than 1899. Close quotation mark. And then enter comma, enter the range of cells again. And this time enter the second criteria in quotation marks. So less than 1911, close quotation marks, close parentheses, press enter, and I get that one home was built between 1900 and 1910. Excel allows you to have several worksheets working on at the same time. So here I have two of them, and you can always create a new one by clicking on the plus sign. Here I have the frequency table for property types. This is qualitative data, therefore the proper way to graph this, if you remember, is pie charts and bar graphs. When you create pie charts and bar graphs, you can select both the descriptor and the frequencies, and then you can go to insert and then choose the proper graph type, and it will create your chart. You can always change the chart title, for example, by clicking on it and then typing whatever you want there. You can always add stuff that you'd like to show in your graph. And in order to make a bar graph, basically do the same thing, but instead of pie, choose the one that looks like bars, like this. I have here two different frequency tables, and this one represents qualitative data and this one is quantitative data. So I'm going to create a bar graph for both of these. So select the two columns, go to insert, select this one, Now I'm gonna follow the exact same procedure for this one and observe what happens. Select both columns again, go to Insert, and select the column chart. So notice that something interesting happened, right? In the case of property type, Excel automatically recognized the first column as the labels for the horizontal axis and the second column as the frequencies. But in the case of number of bathrooms, Excel couldn't recognize the first column as axis labels. Instead, Excel thought that there are two different variables, and these are frequencies for one variable and these are the frequencies for another variable. So that is why if I click on the orange bars, you notice that these are selected because the orange bars are simply the frequencies that are in this second column. But if I click on the blue bars, then it shows that these are simply the frequencies in the first column. And as for the horizontal axis labels, well, Excel just did an automatic numbering, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So now let's delete these two. If we want to create a line graph, we have to do this in two steps. We first select just the frequencies, then go to Insert, and then choose the line 1. And the second step is to change the axis labels. We can do that by right-clicking on the graph, choose Select Data, and then edit the horizontal axis labels. And then here you can just select with the mouse the labels that you had already designed for the horizontal axis. And then click OK, and notice that now they are changed to the proper numbers. Of course, you have to do some editing here. You have to change the title. So let's say these are homes in Lake County. Also, we'd like to add some axis titles. So we can do that by either clicking on the plus sign here or going to Add Chart Element here and choose axis titles in this case. Primary horizontal would be that one, and primary vertical would be that one. And then I can say these are called, this would be called frequency, and then this would be called number of bathrooms. Let's build a histogram for dollars per square feet. In order to do that, I first need to organize all of this data into a frequency table. And necessarily, that frequency table will have classes because there's too many different numbers. So I'm going to have to group them into classes. So I already did that, and this is the frequency table. Now the class column only has one number because the way Excel interprets this is that these numbers are simply the right endpoints of the classes, or the maximum number of the classes. So for example, this class that just says 50, Excel is going to interpret that as the class that goes from 25 to 50. That's because the previous class ended at 25, so necessarily the next class has to start from 25 and it ends at 50, and so forth. So in other words, there were only 3 homes in that column that cost between $25 and $50 per square feet. Okay, now that we have the frequency table, all we have to do to build a histogram is select the frequencies, insert, make a bar graph. Notice it's the exact same instructions as building a bar graph. So first, you will need to change the title. You need to add the axis titles, but I already showed you how to do that. You also have to change these horizontal axis labels, but I already showed you how to do that as well. So let me do that really quickly. Okay, so there. But now remember, this is just bar graph. To make it look more like a histogram, I have to reduce the gaps between the bars. To do that, just right click on the bars, any of the bars, click Format Data Series, and then reduce the gap width. Also, you can play around with this. You can make borders around each of these by clicking on the bucket and then select solid line, and then you can change the color, and then it will have, oh, I did that only for one, so I have to select all of them and solid. Now that's better. Okay, so that's the easy part, creating a histogram and kind of touching it up. But the hard part is actually creating this table. So let me show you how to do that. So the first thing in creating this table is to determine the bins, and this you have to come up on your own. Remember, this is up to you. This is subjective. You can change the sizes of the bins. Instead of each bin containing 25 integers, you can make them 50 or 75 or 10. That's up to you. So I chose this, and of course, in order to make the classes, you first need to find the minimum and maximum values. So I did that using the minimum and max functions in Excel, and I found that the minimum, the cheapest home in terms of square feet, dollars per square feet, cost 18.45, and the maximum was 471.15. And once you find the minimum and the maximum, you find the range, meaning you subtract the two, you find the difference between the two, and then you divide by the number of classes that you would like. So in my case, I divided by 20, and I got 22 point something, and I just, to make it nicer, I rounded that up to 25. So that's how I ended up with classes that go by 25s. Okay, so first you do that. So let me start over from the beginning for you. So you first write the classes. So the first bin, if it goes by 25s, the first bin will go from 0 to 25, so you enter just 25. Then the next bin goes from 25 to 50, so you enter just 50. And then the next one goes to 75, and so forth. And you don't have to do all of them. Once you have even just 2 cells, you can just select them. Excel will recognize the pattern when you do the following. This box in the corner, drag it down, and notice that it's going to add by 25 every time you go down one more. So I'm going to keep doing that until I see I reached more than 471, which was the maximum. So right there. So it automatically filled with all of these values that skip by 25. Okay, so these are going to be the bins, and now I have to count the homes that say belong to the first bin or class, and then the number of homes that go in the second class, and so forth. Now you could do this using COUNTIFs, which I showed you a moment ago, but there's a nice tool that you can use and that comes with Excel. But first you need to add this tool. So this tool is called Data Analysis Toolpak, and I already have added it, but in your case, if you haven't used it, you will not see this in your data menu. So in order to add this, you first go to File, and then go to Options, and then click on Add-ins, and then in Manage, select Excel Add-ins, and then click and go, and then select Analysis Toolpak. Click OK, and then you should be able to see this Data Analysis button. Okay, so now that you have that, we can use that to create this frequency table, to come up with the frequencies. So click on Data Analysis, select Histogram, click OK. First thing is you have to enter the input range. What that means is, where do you want Excel to count from? So obviously that would be from P2 to P188, so you enter P2 colon P188, or you can just select them with the mouse like this. You can just select them with the mouse. Then you have to enter the bin range. What that means is the numbers you just entered, that would be the right endpoints of the classes, those are the ones that you want to select. That's the bin range. And then this one is optional. If you choose new worksheet ply, that will just create a new worksheet, and that's where the new well, let's do that. We can do that, and it will just create a new worksheet, and that's where the new frequency table will be. You can also choose to put it in the same worksheet by clicking on output range and then just selecting a blank cell where you want to print the new table. Okay, but I'm gonna select new worksheet ply. Now here you can choose this if you want to. This you probably don't want to do. You can choose to print cumulative percentages. Let's do that, why not? And if you click on chart output, it will actually create not only count them, not only come up with the frequencies, but also automatically generate the histogram. So let's do that as well. So click OK, and as you can see, it created the bins or the classes. Remember, bin is just a different name for classes. It created the frequencies, so it counted them for you, and it created the cumulative frequencies, the cumulative relative frequencies. Well, actually, we probably shouldn't have selected that, so you can just click on that orange graph, delete, and it will get rid of it. Okay, and then you just format this this bar graph by reducing the gaps and so forth. In order to build a frequency polygon, you're going to follow the same exact instructions as you would for building a histogram, except you don't want the chart itself. So I already have this from building a histogram. So I'm just going to delete the histogram itself by clicking on it and then pressing delete. Okay, but I need this, right? Because I do want the frequencies. Okay, so remember that the difference between a frequency polygon and a histogram is that the bins or the classes are not indicated by the right endpoints of each of the classes. Instead, they are indicated by the midpoints of the classes. So in other words, if this first bin goes from 0 to 25, in the case of a frequency polygon, we want to indicate the midpoint of that class. So what is the midpoint of a class that goes from 0 to 25? Well, you just find the average of 0 and 25, right? And that's 12.5. So you enter 12.5 there. And then what would be the next one? The next one is the class that goes from 25 to 50. So again, you take the average of 25 and 50, and let's see, that will be 37.5. And then you find the midpoint of the class that goes from 50 to 75, and that will be let's see, 65.5. I mean 62.5, sorry, and so forth. So once you find the midpoints of 3 of them, you can just select them and then just drag this box. So Excel will recognize the pattern, and you just keep going until you reach the maximum number you want. So let's see, I want it up to, let's just be safe and select alt there. Okay, so that's it, and now just copy the frequencies. So I do want the same frequencies, so you can copy by right clicking and then select copy, or just do Control C and then click on the blank cell next to the 12.5 and either do Control V or right click, paste. So we have all of these. Alright, now remember also, in the case of a frequency polygon, you do want an extra class at the bottom and at the end, such that the graph will touch the x-axis. So let's just add one more. So a 0 here and a 0 there. Okay, and I want, let's see, this would be, well, I can just do this, right? I can just do that. So this is the class that that has a midpoint of negative 12.5. Alright, and now you just build a line graph, pretty much. So select the frequencies, go to insert, click on the one that looks like a line. Why don't we do one with dots, like that, and then format data series to change the horizontal axis labels. I already showed you all of this, so I'm going kind of fast on this. Click OK, and there you go. Just edit the title and then add the axis titles. And then to build an ogive, you do exactly the same thing, but instead of the frequencies, remember ogive uses cumulative relative frequencies. So you're going to select these and then select insert, line graph again. Let's move this so it's not out of the way. So it's not blocking, sorry. Alright. And again, you have to change this by doing right click, select data, edit the horizontal axis labels, and again this time you want these numbers. Click OK, and it gives you a nice ogive. A scatter plot, remember, is a graph that that you use in order to see the relationship between two variables. So for example, let's say I wanted to know how good of a predictor is your build if you want to predict price. So let's just copy these two variables. So I'm gonna click on N and then right click copy, and then I'm gonna create a new worksheet and then paste it here, Control V, and then I'm also going to select price, so Control C is copy, go back to the worksheet where you had your builds, and then Control V, and that has price. And now that you have the variables next to each other, if you just copied and pasted like I did, then you would have the house that corresponds to the house that was built in 1987 was the one that cost 188,000. So in other words, the rows match. Okay, so to build a scatter plot that describes the relationship between these two, you select the entire two columns and then go to insert and then go to the one that looks like a scatter plot, like this. Click OK, and there it is. You might have to change the title and then add the axis titles. We can also use Excel to find the statistics for large data like this, besides just finding the minimum and the maximum. We can also say find the average. I already showed you how to do that. We can also find the standard deviation. Just start typing equals standard deviation, and then you get two options. You can do population standard deviation is the one with a P, and sample standard deviation is the one with an S. In this case, the context was that this was a sample of all homes in Lake County, so which is standard deviation .s. Remember that Excel doesn't understand the context, so you have to specify for it. Alright, so then you enter the range. In this case, that will be P2 to P188. If I wanted to find the standard deviation of all these numbers. So then you just close parentheses, press enter, and it's a standard deviation of 57. Also, you can find, say, percentiles. You can do equals percentile. Okay, and then you enter the P2, the same range, P2 to P188, and say you wanted to find what is the 30th percentile. So you just enter 0.3. It has to have a point. You have to put in decimal form. Press enter and gives you the 30th percentile, and
You can also find, say, the median, and again you just enter p